This is the Amp Hour Podcast, released January 2nd, 2018. Episode 373, Pedantic or Andrantic?
Welcome to Embedded. I am Alicia White alongside Christopher White, here with Chris Gamble.
Hi, I'm Chris Gamble from the Amp Hour, and we're doing our annual crossover episode. Embedded. Embedded. It sounds more like embedded. I mean, you guys really get the better.
Well, we could call it the Embedded Hour.
It could be the M Hour.
Oh, M-Bout. Well, yeah.
Doesn't sound right.
Anyways, yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy
I
New
think
Year.
we're at the end of the year. We made it. 2017. That dumpster fire, as we talked about in the Amp Hours last episode, the dumpster fire every year. So we made it through.
That's the odd numbered years.
Yeah, exactly. So what's new out there? What's anything on fire, or what's going on out in California?
Oh, we didn't get the fires. The Southern California got the fires. Well, we got a lot of smoke for a while,
And the
which
wine
is
country got
impressive
fires.
since
Oh yeah.
Southern California is 300 miles from us. So
Oh, it was specifically that smoke.
yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. Later,
Okay.
we got the wine country smoke too, but
And
that's
I
a lot
hear
closer.
it is very cold in Chicago.
Oh yeah. It is 4.
There's
That's
not
an
enough
F.
digits in that temperature.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I was flying in today, and I was like, oh, 4 and minus 18F. So I don't know what that translates to C, but it's starting to converge. You know, when it starts to converge, and when F and C start to converge, then that's a bunch of F and C. You know.
That's when you start looking at California and going,
Yeah. Maybe I do want to pay that much for real estate out there, huh?
Hey, it got down to 32 last week for a few minutes. In the morning.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, probably had a water main break or something.
Nah.
all right. So in the last year.
Enough of that.
Enough of that. Somebody listens to the show.
Yeah.
Chris, you left Supply Frame and went to Hologram.
Oh yeah, we have to update our respective listeners if they don't cross over, huh?
Yeah.
Like a true crossover, right? Yeah. So I left Supply Frame, who also owns Hackaday and Fine Chips and a bunch of smaller Tindy stuff like that, and I was doing product stuff there, and now I'm at Hologram, and I am a developer advocate. Are you both developers? I'd like to advocate for you.
Is
Yes.
this like evangelist?
Yes, that's another terrible
form
term
of
for
that
it.
title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I've been thinking about it. It's like an app engineer, but without needing to necessarily. It's just the enthusiasm, not the actual application. So
You just exude positive feelings.
that's right. I'm all positive all the time.
What does Hologram do?
We do connectivity for cellular. So devices that need to connect to cellular towers without a cell phone present. So
Telemetry.
IoT. Yes, telemetry as well. That's a better term.
Weren't these cell modems at one point?
Yeah, that's what I'm putting on boards these days. So like little U-Blocks modems and Sequans and what else is out there? There's I guess that's an integrated board is the PyCom. So there's I'm learning a whole bunch of new stuff and wireless stuff and everything. So yeah, it's been going good.
And Hologram does the whole thing. When you have a cell modem, if I were to go out and just buy a cell modem, I would have to then get a contract, and then it would have to go to a server, and I'd have to deal with the cell modem to server translation, and then the server infrastructure. And Hologram does all of that part, right?
Yeah. There's 3 pieces. So there's hardware, there's connectivity, and then there's software services, right? And those, it's basically 1, 2, or 3. You could pick any. You don't have to use all. You can use whatever you'd want because people don't want to necessarily use our servers, right? So they want to bounce it over to AWS IoT, or they don't want to use our hardware, and that's fine. You could just stick in one of our SIM cards into someone else's hardware, and then you use our connectivity. So it's kind of like you could just use our hardware and use someone else's connectivity, but that's kind of weird. So yeah, there's lots of choices there, and it's kind of just offering all three pieces because have either of you done cellular projects before?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty painful, right? Oh, yeah, probably ShotSpotter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that pain.
Well, when we did it, we got the hardware. We worked with the cell modem companies. We dealt with the servers. We did all of it, and it was hard. It was not. You needed a team to understand both the operation side and the software side. Yeah. And now that team is being outsourced, and I'm not sorry, because as solo providers, it was hard to get the cell modems to work all the time. But as a group, having different boards, I mean, I can just see how hologram and particle IO sorts of things make so much more sense than having to go it all by yourself.
Yeah. There's lots of Particle's great for hardware. Like I said, PyCom's another one's great for hardware. There's tons more providers. I just got a board sent to me from a Tindy seller who's doing stuff that I had never seen before. Just lots of people trying stuff, and and the really crazy thing is it's not. So I posted a bunch of links in the subreddit. I'm looking at LoRa's stuff as well, LoRaWAN, and I'm excited about tying that stuff into cellular, tying that into Wi-Fi, and there's a bunch of YouTubers that are doing that stuff now. It's just kind of RF everywhere.
Aren't we going to run out of spectrum space for all these little devices that are hogging all the limited bandwidth for cellular?
I mean, well, 2.4 ain't exactly the wide open Wild West anymore. It's pretty crowded in there. So yeah, it's what would I see? There was an article about that a while back. It was they're starting to use new white space. So I think it was the 800 megahertz region, because that opened up when the TV stuff went away. Maybe it was lower than, I don't remember what the
it's
actual,
somewhere around there. It's below a gigahertz.
Yeah, it was. And so that's kind of open now. And then, so LoRa can do 433, 890 to 886 or something like that. And then 900. So that's all in there too. And so there's still the different bands, but it's just about how much you're actually using. You're not going to be doing streaming video and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, what's the point?
Right. How do I let my delivery guy into my house?
Exactly. I don't know what he looks like.
Yeah. Right. So I've obviously explained myself too much, but please explain yourselves to my listeners. Who are you, Alicia and Chris?
I am Logical Elegance, and I used to have a partner with my small consulting contracting.
Still do. You just don't pay me.
Well, I mean, you went and got a full-time job.
No, it got me.
Legally, too. I mean, yeah, you guys are still partners, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I'm an embedded software consultant or contractor. And yes, those are different. With contracting, I usually help small companies implement their napkin sketches so that they have prototypes and then they can go off and either try them or get VC funding. And with consulting, usually I help small to medium companies who don't necessarily have another embedded software resource, and they can call me and either chat about their mystery bugs, or I can mentor their engineers. That's really fun. So yeah, that's what I spend most of my days doing: contracting, writing software, writing stuff. Well, sometimes I write documents, and sometimes I write encouraging little notes that say, globals are a good thing sometimes, but let's try not to have quite this many globals.
Yeah.
And Chris, you took a full-time job?
I did. Oh, I guess I should have showed up for that.
This is like the college test.
I was supposed to start this year?
Yeah. Not only did it start this year, you shipped something.
Yes, I went from consultant doing similar things that Alicia was doing to full-time firmware engineer at Fitbit. So if you don't know what Fitbit is,
get your head out of the sand.
You can make fitness trackers and smartwatches and fitness watches and smart trackers.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, lots of tiny embedded things, I'm sure. So
yeah.
Consumer embedded is fun.
Consumer is a different world if you haven't done it before.
We had, some of your former guests as well, Alvaro and Jen, who are the Reverse Engineering podcast, came on and they talked about a lot of that stuff. So that was insightful. That was good. I mean, and I had said, I thought about it after the fact. I was like, I haven't really talked to many, people who've done consumer stuff. And of course, I talked to both of you and just totally gapped on it, so.
Yeah. I mean, I did toys for Leapfrog, and that was even more consumery than Fitbit was because their profit margin was tiny.
Yep.
And a penny really made a difference.
I think about that. So I have young nephews now, and they just have like so many blinking loud things, and I can't imagine like having to test that stuff all day long. I can't imagine like having to like repetitively hear, what is it called? The dogs. What are the dogs these days? Pup Patrol. I don't know. Yeah, I'm like learning all these new brands as well, and they're terrible. It's all terrible. So. At least you were doing educational stuff.
So they weren't terrible. They didn't make any noise.
Some they were still chip tuning, right? It's like you can only take so much 8-bit where you're like, yeah. I had speaking of gifts, I bought my parents an Echo and an Echo Dot. Yes. And I think I'm more in love with it than they are.
Yeah.
The story repeated over and over throughout the country.
Yeah, we bought one for my parents last year. Not sure that I've never heard about it again, so I'm not sure it actually got put into use.
Yeah.
But even though I didn't want something listening all the time, I have to admit I do like our Echo. Mm-hmm. It plays music when I want it to play music, and it tells me jokes, and it occasionally will tell me facts.
Yep. And sometimes it'll order Alexa, order a dollhouse. No,
I actually used it to order
anyone
something.
listening?
A dollhouse.
Yeah.
What?
That was the one where that was the story where a bunch of people actually had it order a dollhouse when they were on a podcast or a news show or something. So, yeah.
You got a neat gift this year, Christopher.
I got many neat gifts.
Well, I was thinking the gift I got you.
Yes.
The best gift. Come on, Chris. So what'd you get?
Well, if you've been listening to our show, which why wouldn't you?
Of course. Embedded.fm. You can go there right now and subscribe.
I've been messing around with analog synthesizers, and she got me.
Oh, yeah.
She got me this semi-kit, although it's mostly assembled from Moog or however you pronounce it, M-O-O-G.
If it's got two O's, it's going to be oo.
Yeah, except it's not.
Moog.
No, it's actually, yeah.
I think it's Moog. It's a very small analog synth, one oscillator, and it's got their usual filters and stuff, but it's for tinkering. So it comes with a PCB and a case, and you have to put it all together. But the PCB has a bunch of test points on it, and the silk screen on the PCB is like a block diagram. So each section of the synth, whether it's the oscillator or the filter or the envelope generator, all that stuff is silk screen and marked. So all the components for each block are ganged together. So you can kind of tell how, just looking at it, how it works. And then it's got all these signals brought out, so you can experiment with it. It's even got, it had like a piece of perf board
area
as part of the PCB.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
so like prototyping area.
And I guess they'd produced this for like a conference for engineers a number of years ago, and everybody freaked out and said, you got to sell this. So they started selling it. So I've been playing with that and plugging it into my other synths and making some very strange noises. And it's been pretty fun.
It's great. Yeah. And is that like one where you actually have a keyboard that controls that, or what actually does that?
It's got some buttons that do a full octave on the front. And then since it has all the control voltage inputs, you can hook it into control voltage equipment. So there's a lot of keyboard controllers that output both MIDI and control voltage. So you can control it with a keyboard. It takes some work and you have to calibrate it, but it does work.
Nice.
How many different synths did you get for these holidays? Was it 4, or was there one I missed?
It was 4.
It was 4. Okay.
Yeah, because I got 3. My parents got me 2 of the little teenage engineering pocket.
Oh, those are so fun.
And you got me one. So I have way too many synths.
John Park showed a picture of this box he made. He's at Adafruit doing project stuff. He had a box he made to take on an airplane to compose stuff to compose chip tunes on the airplane. I thought that was awesome. Also, it would be super freaky. What are you doing?
Yeah, they look a little weird. So they kind of
look like old
movie
calculators.
props.
Yeah,
But
well, that's great. Where do we hear your music?
That music? Nowhere yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there is a place
Okay.
you did start a new music thing.
Yes, my brother and I have been working on stuff
great.
slowly. We released one single.
Nice.
If you care, you can go to 12ax7.fm.
12AX7, like the tube.
Yeah, that's the band name.
Nice.
And
All right.
I feel like
You'll
we
get
should
people
give-
just for that, you know?
it's
Yeah.
it's instrumental guitar rock, and that tune is sort of mainstreamy, and the other two we're currently working on are getting weirder. So
Nice. Yes.
maybe another month or two before we release those.
So I was listening, and you were talking about this kit on your show at one point too. Which episode was that? The latest one?
Probably not.
Which kit?
Oh, you were talking. Oh wait, maybe you were talking about it somewhere else. I don't know.
I had a different
I
kit.
heard you. Oh
Yeah.
well, I heard you talking about a synth at some point. So
Yeah,
I wanted to refer
no,
people to that.
That one is a little noisemaker synth, and that was a full electronic kit. You had to solder and
Oh, okay.
do the full deal. That was the Bastel Castle, I think.
Was that?
BASTL.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was back show 223 of yours.
Yes.
Okay. So, Alicia, what'd you get?
I got a fantastic picture of a narwhal roasting a marshmallow on its horn.
Okay.
That was why I got it too, is because we looked at it and we both started cracking up like right away. And every time
Yeah.
I look at it, it's hilarious.
Is this like a full like living room print or?
It's
It's a hand done
Yeah.
collage of different papers.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's an original, but it's not like a super expensive, super large original.
It's 8 feet by 10 feet.
No, it's like 24 inches by about 10 inches.
Okay.
And then my company, which you might say is just me because people have abandoned me.
I was going to say the IRS would say what?
I got a JTrace Pro, which is the
that?
super fancy. So, there are programmers like for Arduino where it just programs it and then you have to use printf or something to debug the chip. And then there are more proper debuggers like JLinks or ST-Links or even the Blackmagic probes where you can download code, you can flash the code, and you can also use GDB or some other debugger in order to look inside and see what's going on. The JTrace, and there are a few other things like this, but the JTrace not only does the flashing and the debugging, it stores a lot of extra information so that you can backtrace to where you can backtrace everything. So instead of saying, show me the current variable X, you can say, show me what X was 10 cycles ago or 1,000 cycles ago or 20,000 cycles ago. And
how much memory is there? Is it like a ton?
It is just an absolute ton. I mean, it's insane. And the idea is that you know everything about what's happening and you don't have to fiddle. Usually when you're debugging, you have to break in just the right spot and you have to maybe change a few things so that you go down this path. The idea with this is you just let it run and then you sort it out and it's all done.
Well, I mean, it does a lot of other things too, right? You can use it for profiling, so it'll tell you where you spend all your time. And it's instruction accurate, so you can really tell where things are.
And it's got some onboard current monitoring.
No, I didn't know about that.
I think so. I don't know how to use
Connected to what?
Well, I mean, this is one of those things that if you had a 20-pin connector, it would be really nice. You'd get all this information. But even with a 5-pin JTAG style connector or even a 2 or 3-pin SWD style,
You get some.
you
of it.
still get some of this.
Yeah. So for most trace, like the double E has to bring it out for you.
Yeah.
And it's only on the ARM Cortex processors.
Yeah, the one I got was only for Cortex, which I spent a long time trying to decide whether I was okay doing Cortex M or if I thought we were going to be doing a lot more A's and R's this year. I finally
And the A's and the R's
decided.
are like the more Linuxy style. Is that right? Or
Ours have redundancy in them, so it's multiple
Okay.
processors in one chip, and they're good for automotive and medical and space, the areas that you really don't want it to screw up.
The R's are still A series.
Right. And then the A series run Linux usually.
okay.
They're big,
They're
full
bigger.
Yeah.
mobile phone chips.
Not the M's, which are kind of small and very, very cool and very cheap, but kind of small.
Right. Yeah. Resource constrained, right?
Yeah.
Well, and they don't have memory protection. Well, they have some memory protection, but it's not enough to run a Linux-style operating system. So
I mean, you couldn't run much else besides a tiny stripped-down Linux. What about you, Chris? What did you get for Christmas? Or gifting, whatever.
Yeah, boring stuff from just like warm clothes for me. But I had bought myself a Hack RF, so I finally jumped into that, and that's Mike Osman and Great Scott Gadgets. It is their SDR, so it is basically a troubleshooting tool using GNU radio, and so as often listeners of the Amp Hour would know, Mike Osman's been on our show a whole ton, and so he's always talking about that stuff. But basically, it allows you to do SDR in a graphical, or sorry, you can do RF stuff in a graphical manner. So you can basically, make an oscillator, and then you can push it in. Then you can downsample stuff, and basically push around in the spectrum, and then you can actually change sample rates. You can what do they call that? My signal stuff is failing me. Decimate, thank you. Yes, decimate and interpolate and all that stuff, and basically do DSP type stuff without much hassle.
So is that sounds like software though? That sounds like
yes.
the software. So there's a hardware part, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the thing I bought is like a $300. Basically, it is a NXP part that then basically goes to an RF front end, and then an antenna, and basically it's just like, so like I've explained it for Mike when I've talked about for Mike before. I said it's basically like a software interface to RF, and it's great for that stuff. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's I didn't realize GNU Radio is actually basically just doing a graphical block and then writing Python on the back end. So it's just generating Python, and you can hook things together, and it's really great for troubleshooting and hacking and kind of figuring out what's going on in the spectrum. So that's pretty neat.
You have a
my
software-defined radio too.
I have one of the RTL SDR dongles.
Yes.
Which is a little $20 thing that does something. I haven't played with it that much, but
right. Yeah. So that one's basically, that's a TV tuner. That's an old TV tuner, and then you basically can look at. Yeah, you can basically kind of slide around. You can slide the frequency around, so you can tell what frequency you're shifting from, right? So if you're trying to look at signals up at 2.4 gigahertz, you basically tell the device basically says 2.4 gigahertz, and then you shift it down into baseband, and then you can look at it in something like SDR sharp, right? That's right. I assume what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
That's
you can
just
tune all the ham
receive,
bands and stuff. Yeah, it's just receive.
So that's just receive. With the Hack RF, you can actually transmit as well, like low power. But so that's pretty neat. And
you are responsible for using your Hack RF one legally.
That's right. Yes. I think the low power really helps a lot of that stuff. But yeah,
it's not hard to change low power to high power.
Yeah, right. Amplifiers, huh? So yeah, I had a lot of trouble getting it set up, to be honest. It was much more difficult than I thought that would be. They basically say you should use Pen2, which is a distribution of Linux, which is based on Gentoo, which itself is not super friendly. And my mistake is I think it was just what they were on. It's like a security-based Linux thing, so it makes sense that the security people would be doing that. My mistake was I kept trying to force the issue. I was like, I'm going to have my MacBook Pro with me. I'm going to try and put it on the MacBook, and just trying to get stuff installed as a secondary OS, and it's a hot mess. And plus, it's got the USB-C ports, so like I'm I'm like, all right, well, I just need to buy a computer just for that. I know that's not actually like if someone heard me say that who was with an Hack RF, they'd be like, oh, get a Windows computer or Linux computer. But yeah, my experience with Macs has been very, very poor so far. So, but otherwise, yeah, I'm sure that you can both commiserate on using Macs.
I'm not sure it's the Mac's fault that a completely obscure distribution of Linux has been chosen.
I don't know. You ever tried like installing like just even Ubuntu on it? Like on. Oh yeah, maybe I'll have to ask you more about that after the show. I'm having a lot of trouble with that. So, and I'm talking
using?
like no VMs though. Like
oh, you do
I had
Boot
asked.
Camp? Yeah,
you can't use Boot Camp. You have to basically use like a different boot start thingy. I'm sure that people are going to write in and be all angry about this stuff, but I've really struggled with it. So
now, if you can't use a VM, that gets trickier.
Yeah, right. I did a VM, but like basically it's so the hardware is so coupled that like you get all these overruns really quickly. So it's just got to try it elsewhere. So with Linux, so with Ubuntu even there's a build for it now as well, and that's what Dominic, one of the other software people at Great Scott, told me to use. So it's better. So I got that.
What are you gonna do?
I got a bunch. So I'm playing with LoRa modules, like I mentioned at the beginning, and so basically just having troubleshooting for that, and just kind of seeing what's going on there. Obviously, I'm doing cellular stuff, so just kind of peeking at the spectrum and having a better grasp of it all.
Bought yourself a work tool.
I know.
I bought myself a work tool.
I mean, my business bought me a work tool, so yeah, I think it's a similar kind of thing. And it's I don't know. It's an interesting. I wish someone would have showed me this. So like you can just go and watch. I think I mentioned this on the last Amp Hour, but you can just go and watch Mike Osmond's like intro video for it. And I just wish that something like that would have been around when I was learning signal stuff. Like just show me that, right? Show someone hooking stuff together. You're basically, you're demodulating a FM signal. You're using some blocks. So yes, of course you're hand waving a little bit there, but man, at the end you have like an audio signature. Like it's fantastic. It's context and that's what I really missed about my learning process in school. And I think we've talked about this, endlessly now, but these kind of tools are just make it so clear even at the beginning. So like I was listening to your show. Your last show was with the Udacity
Anthony.
person.
Yeah.
That was great. And I sent you that. So he talked about the Dreyfus, or you told him about the Dreyfus model, I think.
Yeah. We talked about it to him, which was a little odd because I was hoping for a pedagogy from Udacity, but
yeah,
that wasn't Anthony's ball of wax, so that's fine.
Oh yeah, and I meant to tell you this on the secret Slack channel that I'm on with you guys.
You can't say that out loud.
Oh no!
You have to type it to us instead.
Yeah, sorry. I learned from Mel. So I had sent you both a comic about the Dreyfus model. It's by a friend Mel, and Mel told me or something very interesting. Pedagogy is the wrong term.
Is it?
Did you know that? It's
no.
andragogy. Andragogy.
Oh, because we're adults.
Exactly. I was like, oh my God, yeah, of course, right. But it's like, that's just the accepted term is pedagogy, right? But it's actually, pedagogy is for children.
Are you being pedantic or andrantic now?
Nice. Very nice.
Pedantic or andrantic? I think we've just found a title for the show. I don't know.
I'm sticking with pedagogy because
people know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Or at least they have heard that word.
Right.
But I will accept that it is wrong. Just like how when I say lead sentence, Christopher corrects my spelling on that. And I'm like, still don't care.
Right.
Well, this is an exciting tour through linguistics.
The Dreyfus model, though, I love the Dreyfus model, right? And you were both talking about that. But the Dreyfus model is great because it's like these different stages of like, the thing that I loved about Mel's comic is basically like you're going to cook a thing, right? You're going to cook a thing, and the first thing that an absolute beginner asks is like, you need to say like, you crack an egg into the bowl, and here's what an egg looks like. Like that's the stuff that you don't even think about. Like, yeah, of course, someone who's an absolute beginner needs to know what an egg actually looks like. And I love that. I don't know. It was great. I will post that comic. So
it's a great comic, and it shows you the Dreyfus models, and it kind of, I mean, there's been a few people who have been talking about how you don't teach experts the same way you teach novices.
Yep. So Daniel Spalding is a book about teaching adults as well, and he talks about that. I've talked about that, I think, before. So.
What is it?
Daniel Spalding. He has I think it's just an ebook. Daniel Spalding is a book called Teaching Adults, and it specifically covers that. So,
oh, it's funny. I'm looking at a book, How to Teach Programming and Other Things, which I don't think is the same person. It's How to Teach is his site.
Okay.
But he talks about how a novice with computer programming may not understand that there is a difference between, that there is no real useful difference between cutting and pasting a program into something and typing it in character by character, that those are identical to a compiler or to an interpreter. They're not even wrong. There's just no mental model and how you have to build things up. And I think if more people know about the Dreyfus model, we can start talking about the things inside there and how you can, you sent over a link, the advanced expert. So the Dreyfus model starts out with the novice where you really don't know anything. And then the advanced beginner where you start to know things. And then the third level is competency. So that kind of, most people know what those three things are. Mm-hmm. And you sent over an article that talked about the advanced expert, where you, instead of becoming competent, you wander off into your own little branch, and you can never really become competent from there because you have defined your own science. And so you can't go beyond that. You have to know that you're a beginner in order to learn more.
Isn't that where Dunning-Kruger lives?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
It's the lane that you wander down, right? Yeah, I'm well, and I think this is actually pretty poignant because I'm kind of in this realm of I'm trying to relearn software, and I'm really struggling. I'm really having a tough time, and I don't really know where to go next. And people point me to coding boot camps.
Yeah. That's all one size fits all stuff. So I would ask you, since you didn't ask for advice, but
sure.
So
hasn't stopped you in the past, man.
What do you want to do with it?
Okay,
would be the first question. And how are you attempting to learn now?
The answer is I want to do my job.
Okay.
And how I'm attempting to learn is going just screaming and Googling stuff, pretty much. So
this is a case of definitely do what I say and not what I do, but getting frustrated doesn't help.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just stop doing that. Click.
Yeah.
Just turn off that when Data in Star Trek, he just turns off his emotion chip. You just okay.
Turn off your frustrator chip.
Yeah, that was easy.
But for your job, I mean, what do you need to what?
So my job these days is no. It's not secrets. It's basically making tutorials. I just have to go out and the hardest thing is when there's a new platform, right? You have to kind of just go and make examples for people, and you have to learn stuff, and you have to struggle. You're basically just struggling for people so that they have a starting point. And some of it is just, some of it literally is tenacity, right? And the thing I always emphasize is that when I think of someone like Ben Krasnow, who I hold up as the great prototyper, right? It's just tenacity, right? Or like Sammy Kamkar, right? Sammy is super tenacious, and people like that, they just or Micah just keeps trying different things and is methodical about it, right? That whole so I've been meaning to laser cut a thing above my bench, but just say experiment first, right? So the best prototypers, the best people doing this stuff, they're not necessarily I'm just kind of floundering, but they basically say, I want to try. I have a thesis, or I have a what's the word? I have
idea, goal,
No, scientific
thought
method.
on how this works. I mean, hypothesis.
Yeah. Hypothesis. That's the word. Thank you. I have a hypothesis, and here's what it is. I'm going to try X, Y, Z, and I try it, and then do I meet the hypothesis? If not, cycle back through. Like basically applying the scientific method to prototyping is like a goal of mine, and I really struggle with it. I mean, like it's because there's so much information out there as well. Like so, there's also the whole tuning out the world and not getting super frustrating and just Googling everything.
Yeah,
that's a rabbit hole.
You're talking about learning coding, and that's not my approach. That's not my approach until I'm debugging something or there's a problem. So I'm trying to think if
and that's what I wonder about. Like, should I be going back to basics?
Well, why? Okay. Why are we the worst people to ask?
I don't remember how to teach somebody how to program. I know how to teach somebody how to learn stuff, but not
right.
Somebody asked me about pointers, and I'm like,
here's where I'm headed with this. There's the tactical part of programming, right? There's I'm programming in C, and I know about these data structures, and I know how pointers work. And then there's the mindset of programming, which is I know how to structure a program. I now know fundamentally how a computer thinks, and before I even start typing, I have some idea for how this program or library or set of things I'm working on are going to be laid out and communicate with each other and what the memory is going to be doing. So
that
my
part
worry
I know
is
how to teach.
If you start with the prototyping stuff, you're kind of in the tactical zone. Yeah. And that seems like an easy place to get into trouble. If you don't, I feel
like some of it is like the blank sheet of paper problem, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Is like sometimes it's just blank sheet of paper. It's like, okay, well, and there's a link that I put on our list here from Dan Liu as well. He talks about at one point where he basically started he had a mentor he went to, and he kind of just kept he basically built confidence of like the blank sheet of paper problem, right? Of being able to like go and he basically kept being presented with harder and harder problems. And then at a certain point, it's like, well, I can just go and take on any problem. It's like, yeah, of course. Right. I mean, if with enough time and the internet, you can pretty much do anything. And I think that's the blank sheet of paper problem. But the rest of it is okay, now you have a blank sheet of paper. What are you putting on that paper? Right. And like, what are the generally accepted methods, or even like, where are the resources to go towards so that you can pre-fill some of that sheet of paper? You know what I mean?
So I listened to a new podcast that one of our listeners is the host of, the Function podcast.
Oh, Tom Anderson.
With Tom Anderson, yes. And one of the ones they had was talking about notebooks and how if they get nice notebooks, they'll never use them. And they now have decided that when they get nice notebooks, they put something on the first page. And thereby it's ruined. It doesn't even matter what they put on. They're going to ruin their notebooks so they can use them. Right. I feel that way about the blank sheet problem. Put anything down. Put how are you going to debug it? Put how are you going to use printf? Put hello world. And now it's not a blank sheet anymore.
Write the problem down.
Write down the problem statement. Use the scientific method. What is your hypothesis? What is your problem? Or write down something utterly generic. Like many of my projects have a debug console at one point in their lives for manufacturing or for debugging or
a serial console.
A serial console. So I start with a serial console, and that means I need a UART. Now, what are my other hardware inputs and outputs? And so I need drivers, and now I can test them all from the serial console and build up my whole system. And it's a lot about not having a blank sheet of paper. It's about having these Lego blocks that you toss on the paper, and then you can figure out how to put them together and what glue logic you need. Yeah. Is that helpful, or are you like, where did the semicolons go?
Oh, no, I mean, like a lot of that stuff. I mean, well, I think these are two different problems too. Some of it is the where do the semicolons go? Like, what was it? It was at SuperCon. I opened up Mike Harrison, and so that's the opposite problem, right? So one's the blank page problem, right? Of just like, all right, what's first, what's next? The other problem is, okay, now you're starting from someone else's project, and you open up and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's a different
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's another problem. I mean, that's probably a little bit, well, I don't know actually what would be more likely these days. I guess if I'm Googling around and I'm trying to like, piece together different things, it's kind of how fast can you how fast can you take in what someone else has written or, is trying to do, and then make it your own. And that, I think some of that is just where does semicolon go? It's what the hell is that? what are they doing there?
That becomes a lot easier if you've ever implemented anything similar, because then you know what the structures are. You know what the overall, like if you're doing signal processing, you probably need an amplifier. You probably need some sort of filter. And so when you're faced with a giant schematic, you start breaking these things down into blocks, and the blocks you understand. And you have to do that with software too. If you're looking at a giant wall of software, hopefully they've broken it into some blocks for you just by
but
files.
It's still going to have stuff that's idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've never seen a linked list implemented in C, you're not going to know what you're looking at.
Right. Yep.
And they're going to call it LL instead of linked list, so you're not going to be able to look it up.
Or
why would they do that?
Pointer stuff, array stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I think diving into the deep end is not probably a healthy activity.
Well, there are some good sites. I mean, SparkFun and Adafruit both have a huge amount of code, and they write their code with the intention that it is read. And that is a lot different than some of the open source projects that are written with the intention that it's my project, you can just get off my lawn.
I don't think you can learn by reading code. Not initially.
I think initially that's really hard.
I think you need to do exercises and implement stuff. And that's the hump to get over, because you can't really do anything exciting yet. And if you try to do something too exciting, you're just going to get frustrated. I mean, that's why courses are structured the way they are, right? I mean, you do a bunch of boring exercises.
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, so I've been working on that for my course as well. If people don't know, I have an online course and I teach people hardware and thinking about, and this is how I met Mel as well and learned about Dreyfus method. I was kind of starting to restructure some of my course and thinking about this because, I mean, well, so both of you, are learning and or have learned hardware. And so, as well, it's a similar kind of problem of like why resistor? why is capacitor? And right? I mean, it's just it doesn't make any sense at the beginning, and and obviously people start with math and they go, oh well, let's do some calculus and so yeah. I mean, I agree that like some rigor is helpful there, but it's that balance of like where do you introduce it? I think that's always the problem. So
just in case nobody has heard, what is this thing that you're talking about teaching electronics? Is there a name for it?
Yes, there is. It's called Contextual Electronics. Thank you. Yes, it's a course that I teach online, and there's a lot of free stuff too. So like getting to Blinky it's meant for getting started in KiCad, but it's also a good introduction to doing layout just in general. And so it's basically a 555 timer with some, like what do you need to get a small circuit blinking, because blinking is the hardware equivalent of Hello World. And then there's a small one as well for doing a blinker for Raspberry Pi, which is even shorter. And then there's a bunch of courses around building devices for that aren't blinking, just blinking. So, yeah.
I thought I went through one of the short ones with the getting to Blinky and installing KiCad and all of that. And I thought I would just do it and learn it enough that it was something I could see if I wanted to do more of. And I got to the end and there was no way that I could fail to send it off to Osh Park to get the board. I didn't actually stuff the board, but okay. I did.
But you held it in your hand.
Yeah, there was something about getting to hold it in my hand that was exciting.
That's super exciting. That's a great feeling. That's like a dopamine rush. It's all about the dopamine, right? So, yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So I liked the parts of contextual electronics I have taken. I think that it is very cool. Unfortunately, I have gotten very sucked into more software instead of more hardware lately.
So say we all. I mean, I think I like the comparison though about the looking at schematic and blocks, because that was like so I think there's like different moments in hardware, like for my own journey, where like certain pieces of the matrix kind of fell into place, right? So like actually being able to visualize current in a circuit is a huge difference. and then being able to actually pull out, like being able to visualize blocks in a schematic and saying, oh, well, that piece is just an amplifier, but with other stuff around it, that's a filter, blah, 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 right? And like hooking things together like that in my mind is super important. So I assume that that's an analog to what you're talking about with the code piece as well. Whereas I haven't figured out the blocks yet, so I can't just look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's one way to start analyzing it too, because code is naturally structured as blocks if it's written well. You have individual functions that are supposed to do one thing, and then you can find the top level and start diagramming it. But you really do have to diagram it. You can't try to hold it in your head. But some of at interviews, some of the most deep questions I've ever gotten have nothing to do with code. It's been like, well, we're building this system to do this. Give me the block diagram. And you can start pretty high level and then start get to a lot of details that way.
Right. Yeah. And that's like pattern matching, right? That's human stuff, right? It's like, okay, well, I've seen this 100 times.
Right.
90 of them have been this way. It's probably going to be this way, but maybe not. You can discuss it there. That's experience.
And what languages are you looking to write in?
So I'm doing C. I'm doing some MicroPython, CircuitPython, MicroPython. And then my goal this year is to, Python as well, just like higher level Python, but maybe do some JavaScript.
Yeah. I don't love JavaScript, but it's very useful. Right? And it's between C and Python.
I was inspired by Micah too. Yeah, I mean, as basically
someone who
making
works
interfaces
on a product
and stuff like that.
Where
right, your apps are written in JavaScript.
The SDK is JavaScript. I can say nothing negative.
You can say lots of things negative.
No, it's really cool.
I've listened to your show. Yeah,
damn thing to get going to write an app for something. They did a really good job. So I really can't say anything bad about it. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, sometimes we make fun of JavaScript, but it's only because we're C programmers and we fought hard for that knowledge, so we have to protect it.
I think some of it is like, I get a little frustrated when I see people like shoehorning it, right? So like running hardware with JavaScript, I get the draw. It's like, oh, we're going to pull more people in. And I'm more for that than I used to be, where I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, more people doing hardware is just a generally good thing. But it's like, you could say the same thing about Python, I suppose, or CircuitPython. But eventually you got to dive down.
It doesn't go away. People are trying to shoehorn things in all the time.
Yeah, right.
Says the person who is trying to block his shoe from
says the cobbler, the cobbler's assistant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Rust going around.
Oh yeah,
Rust.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. A lot of people really interested in Rust and trying to make it go places it probably shouldn't yet.
My eyes just glaze over when I hear about that stuff. Yeah.
Raspberry Pi and BeagleBone both made JavaScript so easy, and Python on those are so easy that I understand. You start using those, you start wanting to do more hardware, and you don't want to have to deal with C. So yeah, I totally understand that. But I agree with Chris. A block diagram, totally the way to start.
Start teaching or start projects?
Start projects. You don't need to know what's in all the blocks, but...
And analyzing other people, like you said, when you are faced with code you've never seen.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, so another thing that I've been... I think we have goals on here. We talked about goals for 2018.
Oh, God, do we have goals for 2018? Yeah, we do have goals for 2018.
Someone wrote it. I don't know if it was me. It might have been me.
Definitely wasn't me, because I just saw this diagram an hour ago.
Yeah. So my goal for 2017, which did not go super great, was to get better at iteration. And I think that's a really big piece too, because it's kind of what you're talking about. It's like I think a lot of this is still residual school stuff. Personally, like you need to get it right. It needs to be right the first time, and it it's like that. That's a really bad. I'm very against that, because the best people just iterate and understand that there will be iteration, including for hardware, right? Like, so yes, I want to get my circuit board right the first time, but it's not the end of the world if it's not right the first time. You should send it out, right? And a lot of people get hung up on that piece, especially because it's so cheap these days. Same thing for code. It's like, yeah, it might not work, but then you just recompile it and try it again. So
There's some of that. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Iteration is important and getting good at it. I do think sometimes easy iteration becomes an excuse to not think.
I'm a monkey typing at a keyboard, and I will just type all the options.
And that's not an accusation. I do this all the time. When debugging is like, okay, I'll just change this line. Well, there's this parameter. I'll just change it. There's only 600 possible combinations. So how long?
Binary tree.
At 1 minute,
that'll take me the weekend.
Compile and download, that'll take 10 hours. So I'll just do that. But, or I could go sit and think for 2 hours and, that's the actual problem. So, there's a balance. But
it is, yes, it is a balance. I have a theory that so every time I see people using an other mill, I think the other mill, which I love as a tool, I think that is I think that company has been bolstered by software people. They see hardware and they go, I need to iterate faster, and I will do anything to do that. And I think the other mill is a path forward. I don't know if it's the only path forward, but software people are like one of the main clients there. Because I look at it, I'm like, I can't use that for much. So
I would use it for jewelry and fun things, but not for boards. I never really understood the board thing.
I love solder mesh, so gotta have it. Yeah, but not everybody does though. So
okay, so that was the not goal for 2017. Do you have actual goals for 2018, or are you just carrying that one over?
I have themes, which is like the biggest cop-out ever. But basically when I came up with, I should probably publish it this year if I'm going to talk about it here. So yeah, I had other ones for 2017. So iteration was the first one. I did okay on that. What was that the other one from last year? Flexibility last year, not great. And then temperance, I did good on that. And so this year I have experiment/risk-taking. That's the big one. Produce efficiently, and then tell stories. Those are my three themes for 2018. And produce efficiently is something that I'm very about. I have been about because like just basically reducing overhead on projects. Being able to iterate faster means you need to lower your overhead. So like video editing was a big one in 2017. So, but that's like workflow stuff. So like just improving workflow so that you can iterate faster, and you can, it's there's a lot of stuff in there or layers in that thing, but tell stories is pretty self-evident, I think. And then experiment risk-taking, I think, is also, but that's also like trying RF. RF scares the shit out of me, to be honest. Excuse my French. I don't know why. It's just always scared me. I've never, I have a ham license and I've never used it, so. 2018 is the year of RF. So
I have a ham license and I know how to use it. No.
All right. You're not afraid to use it, huh?
No.
Do Yins have any goals?
I don't do that.
Good policy.
I have a couple of goals. I don't know if they're 2018 specific. I remember one year I had a resolution to have a resolution every week for the year.
That's right.
That was pretty amusing, that every week I would try something different. And they were things like go out after dark to do things at least 5 days out of 7, or not eat any sugar for a month was probably what killed the whole thing, because a month was way too long to go without sugar. Right. And that was pretty cool. That was very adventurous and led to lots of different interesting things. Between eating grains for at least 3 times a day, or baking bread, it was fun. But I don't think I have anything like that this year. I've been on a kick of learn hard things. Learning easy things is fun, but everyone can learn easy things.
Right.
If I want to be relevant career-wise, I need to learn hard things, because not as many people will be able to learn hard things. And if I can mix them together the right way, then it will be very useful.
Do you have examples?
Well, like I've been doing computer vision and robotics and machine learning, and I have been trying to learn all three of these things, and it's really hard to do all of them. And I took the Udacity self-driving car class for the term one, which had some computer vision and some machine learning, but that was very much at the Dreyfus a beginner, advanced.
What is an egg? What does an egg look like?
No, it got past the novice of what is the egg.
I was doing some pretty. I mean, I don't know how easy these things are, but some of the exercises I was looking at what you were doing, going, "Whoa, what, really?" Like,
but I was
the car is, it's marking all the lanes, and you have to take their video of driving and mark all the cars. It's like, wow, this is really sophisticated stuff, and you're only a couple weeks in, so. It seemed cool from the outside.
It was cool, and I learned a ton, but I was following their recipes.
Okay. Right. And so it's like cocktail party cool, right? It's like, oh, wow, that has like some flash to it, but you're saying that you couldn't, if you didn't have the recipe, you wouldn't necessarily go far?
Well, I am saying that I started that way. I have been working on my own robotics AI computer vision project. And without the information from the class, I would have a whole bunch of things I don't know. I would have 95% unknowns. But because of the class, I learned Python much better. I learned OpenCV much better. And so now as I'm trying to solve my own problems, I'm down to 40% unknowns, which that I can start looking up, that I can Google, I can read the books. And I'm not completely bewildered. And that's been leading to some neat things that I didn't expect.
So that's the thing I didn't say well when we were talking about learning, is you kind of have to have a hook. You kind of have to have a hook to learn.
Knowing what to Google for?
Well, but, you need, like, to learn C or Python. You got better at Python by taking this course about machine learning and machine vision, not about Python. And so you had a good hook to get you interested and, kind of backdoor teach you Python. So I think that's really important, and it's hard to find the right hook sometimes.
Well, it was.
So you mean like a project though? Like that's the hook you're
project
talking about?
or a course or something.
Totally.
But it's not. You don't go out and say, "Oh, I want to learn Python, so I'll take the Python course." Necessarily.
Totally agree. Right.
No, exactly. And I read a lot of their Python, and so some of the things, like some really bad ways of doing lists and slicing them, I got better because I was looking at how they were doing it, and it was much clearer and simpler, and probably a lot faster. That was part of the thing. I wrote a book. I don't know if your listeners know that. Heck, I don't even know if my listeners know that. But I did write a book about embedded systems.
Hey, we've all plugged something this episode. So.
I was going to say, it's good. It's good you're doing that. Also, people may remember this from when you were on the show the first time. I think we talked about it then. Episode 187, Wirewove Worshipping Wookieist. Back when we did that whole mess.
But a lot of the pitch for my book was that you would only learn half the book. The other half of the book you'd already know. It was for people who already knew some computer science or people who already knew some electrical engineering. And the idea was you would cantilever off the knowledge you had into the other half. And I think that's important. I think it's important for me as I learn, because I need to attach it to something, or I just don't. I see it and it goes by, and I don't catch it. With the Python, it had to be part of machine learning because I was really wanting to learn the machine learning part, and even the machine learning had to be attached to something, which is why I have my little typing robot, and that's really just attached to my sense of humor because it's so ridiculous.
Right. So, do you think that's enough of a draw? Like, if you had, so say your dogs needed like computer vision help to like do something, right? Would that be a different draw? Like, is the typing robot itself enough of a draw?
It is for me.
Project?
It wouldn't be for everyone. It is for me because career-wise, the ability to identify and react to environmental stimulus through a robot in which I can explain the kinematics and the drive mechanisms, that's all career-wise very good for me.
Got it.
But if I was a home hobbyist and I really didn't care about being able to talk about these in job interviews, then being able to open the door for my dog when it wants to come in, totally different set of things. Maybe I wouldn't be spending nearly as much time doing matrix math. Maybe I wouldn't be spending nearly as much time drawing out what I'm learning and trying to make sure that I can explain what I'm learning. Different paths are great for different people. But for me, for 2018 and for last half of 2017, it's been learn hard things because that's what I need to do. I think I spent too much time learning easy things, learning fun things. And I forgot some of that tenacity and some of that resilience that I needed to stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I always tell people about that too, with like, you never learn hardware, like when you're actually manufacturing it, like in volume if you can, but if not, I mean, even if it's low volume, you don't realize how much stuff will go wrong. And that's why you always read about people like, oh, well, our stuff's 18 months late because we forgot about A, B, and C. It's like, well, you didn't forget about it. You probably just didn't know about it and you didn't think to ask people because you don't know what to ask. So that's tough.
And so you try it. I mean, that's the iteration part.
Right. But yes, but I think that the thing is like finding a mission also helps, right? For some people, it's like, oh, I have a Kickstarter, I want this thing in the world, and then they finally go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Applications always matter to me. I mean, the typing robot, I'm hoping at the end it is nearly performance art, even though there are plenty of other robots that can type. The combination of the cheapest possible robot arm and the ridiculously expensive intelligence and the two cameras that require it's just going to be very silly.
Yeah.
It's really ridiculous. And that
who specified this?
It makes me laugh, and that's what I want it to do. Laughing's good.
Right. There was an article I posted too about it was definitely an auxiliary industry. It was about reading though, and about like people teaching like literature, and it was kind of in the same realm, right? Of like the struggle is the important thing, right? Or what did they say? The difficulty is the point. So like finding these hard problems like you're talking about is like its own reward. I mean, obviously you get to solve the problem, but you also get the stuff by proxy. You get the information and the knowledge by proxy. So I think that's a really good goal to have. I mean, or goal or theme or whatever it is. So
I think the other theme is mental health this year.
Yeah. A little too much work last year?
No, actually it wasn't too much work. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
But
was this, you posted another podcast that I started listening. The Thwad? Someone posted this.
Oh yeah, no, that was yeah. So I started listening to this APM NPR podcast, The Hilarious World of Depression.
Yeah. It was really good. The one with Jeff Tweedy was really, really good.
I haven't heard that one yet, but it's really high functioning, really funny, smart people talking about their struggles with depression. And the thing I have most taken away is that I need to stop pretending that I don't have a problem or that I have a little problem, and I need to go get some help because I clearly have a big problem. These people are talking about their problems as having a big problem, and I'm thinking, that's not that big a deal. I deal with that all the time. Maybe I need to see somebody about this.
Yeah. No, I think it's very, I think in engineering especially, like smart people have this stuff and they're like, well, I can think my way out of it. It's like, well, sure. That is not always, sometimes it's chemical. So I've been to therapy. If that's, I'd say wonderful thing. I love it. It was a great time not a great time. It was a terrible time, but it was a very helpful thing. And I think that, if people, if it's out there and people realize that it's more common than they think. Yeah, I think it's good to go talk to someone, See,
you're so lucky. I've been to 2 therapists in my life and they both sucked. Like really,
that's too bad.
Like one after I left, I was way more messed up. The other one kind of looked at me as a high functioning engineer and was like, oh, well, we don't need to see each other anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't even started to tell you my problems because honestly, I'm not the sort of person who can just tell you on the first date. So you're right. We don't need to see each other anymore.
Right. No, I've had bad ones too. So I've had good ones and bad ones. So
you know how many.
Yeah, and well, in that hilarious World of Depression talks about you do need to go through 4 to 6 in order to find one, and even that's average. Not you have to find one that can deal with you.
Yep. Yeah.
So
that's good advice.
Yeah, mental health 2018.
I like that.
See, I have questions from listeners for hardware things that we couldn't answer.
Oh. I will join you in not being able to answer them. Go ahead.
There was one from Tyler. His question is, how can he make prototyping cheaper and faster? See, this is such a softball question for you. He says, my college taught wire wrapping. What was it, like 1920? And it was basically torture.
What is it with the DVD commentary?
I'm currently considered using KiCad because it's free and ordering PCBs from something like Oshpark. A lot of the homemade PCB solutions don't look appealing. Maybe we can recommend something. Can we recommend something?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty easy. Yeah. You're right. That is a softball. I mean, but here's the thing I'll say, right? Whatever you pick as your first CAD program, you're probably going to use for a long time. So keep that in mind. Choose wisely. I mean, like, and it's not. I have gotten past the point where if people aren't using KiCad, KiCad, whatever, I don't care anymore. I still want to help people with their electronics problems, but I teach with it, so that's why. And I think it's actually pretty great. So yeah, I think Tyler would definitely benefit from that. I would also caution though as well. I jump into using PC layout programs way too fast. Don't necessarily wire wrap, but man, Skywire and like just duct tape stuff together, and like the best prototypers, right? So like I like talking about the best prototypers, like I talked about, like Ben and Micah and everyone like that. Like they bodge stuff at first, right? They take existing solutions. So Alan Yates, who's also been on our show before, and I think your show, yes. Your show too. So he talks about as well. Jerry, all these people that were Jeff, all these people that have been at Valve and elsewhere. The best prototypers, I think, they take what they can, they do the most they can with the hardware they have. And so if that's wire wrap, that's fine, right? If it's a development board where you're then wiring in a sensor, right? So you have a sensor board breakout and you're just literally wiring two boards together. That's great. If you're using a breadboard, I'm not a huge fan of breadboards, but sometimes that is the solution. So plugging stuff together with those wires. And up until like about 10 megahertz or so, you don't really have to worry too much. From there, for sure, yeah, the layout and learning that stuff. And start small, like we talked about in this show already. So get something to blink. And, maybe KiCad's the way for you. So, Oshpark, of course, I love as well. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. I agree. If you can find a dev board that's even the least bit similar to what your goal is, start there. I mean, you can go pretty far.
The modular world is pretty extensive
Modular's
these days, right? So you can get
I've been pointing people to Tindy very often. I mean, obviously I used to work for the company that owns Tindy, but like more and more people are putting stuff on there. Tindy, eBay, maybe even looking on like a Hackday.io or a Hackster and like finding people that are already doing it and being like, hey, do you have any extras? Like just like reaching out to people too. You never know. And they might point you to stuff that they've used too. So a little bit of extra legwork can save you lots of time, because nothing's worse than like getting all the way through a design cycle, right? You're designing a breakout for a sensor, and then you make a mistake on the board and you got to do another cycle there. It's like, if you can pay a little more even, I know that they asked cheaper and faster, right? So cheaper, sometimes it's worth it. It is cheaper to pay a little more. That sounds stupid, but
there's the cheap, fast, and good axes, right?
Right. Yep.
Well, there's even just the cheap and fast. I mean, if you get a dev board from SparkFun, maybe it's $30. Maybe all of the parts on it only cost about $5. Well, if you make your own and you don't even count your time, by the time you have made a board and stuffed it,
right, it's a lot more than $30.
Yep.
That's the difference between prototyping. With prototyping, buy off the shelf if you can, because it will be cheaper. Now, when you start making 10 and then 100 and then maybe 1,000,000, the economies of scale are not the same as they are when you're making 1 or 3.
Right.
So, and
at that point, someone else might be doing your layout anyway. So, it's somewhere between about 5 and 100, you're probably gonna have to make your own board, and you probably have to learn some methods that you might not already know. But that won't be faster.
Kidding.
Yeah. So, I don't know if we had, did that answer the question or no?
Well, I think so.
I think my problem is that I've gotten so far into like the pay to solve my problems stuff these days. Like I pay for software now, like happily. Like I have a smile on my face when I pay for software. Like 10 years ago, me is like, what are you doing? Just struggle with GIMP for a while longer.
No,
Inkscape isn't so bad.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and like these days though, like I just love paying a little bit more and for like solved problems, right? So like both of you are fans of the Salier. I think Salier is fantastic. That's like a logic analyzer with like a really intuitive interface. That's a solved problem now. Same thing with like I like the Analog Discovery 2. You've talked about that too. Like from test equipment side of things, pay for that, no problem. Software, pay for that, no problem. Breakout hardware, pay for that, no problem. Granted, the caveat here is hardware is expensive. It's so expensive. So just keep that in mind.
Well, it's cheaper than it was. I mean, a logic analyzer.
So much cheaper than it was.
You know, the first time I used a logic analyzer was this giant thing from HP that probably came with a personal support engineer.
Mm-hmm. So. Yep. Yeah, and it's getting better and better. Like, I mean, like just even looking at the number of Tindy sellers, there's so many people doing that. Or if you watch, so I was just watching the funny sounding Swiss engineer, he calls himself, Matthias, I think, one of the YouTubers. He does mailbags, and then Mick Makes does mailbags, and Dave, my co-host, does mailbags. And like, I'm just thinking about like, how many people are sending boards around to everyone? Like, what a wonderful world we're living in, where there's just hardware floating through the postal system to random people. Well, obviously YouTubers, but
we got random hardware, and it wasn't because of the show.
Whoa, really?
BMW sent us this package.
Oh God!
And in
this
the
is
package,
a different reason, though.
You open up the
it's
container, and then there's this
booklet.
Yeah. And it's like a hardbound picture book. So it's
not super hardbound, but it's cardboard.
It's solid.
Right. Yeah.
And then you open up the right flap, and then you open up the left flap, and a video starts playing, and music starts playing, and there's a video player in this little book thing.
Yeah, they snail mailed a YouTube ad to us.
They snail mailed a YouTube ad. And when I pushed skip, there was no good video afterwards.
It's like a 5-inch 800 by 500 display with a speaker, and
it had a pretty big
really that resolution
LiPo in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So she tore it to shreds, and it's got
and there's pictures that will go online at some point, right?
It's got some ARM chip from Allwinner, I think, and flash and RAM and display, and
a USB port, which I will so not plug into anything. and you thought that you could change out the video on the USB port. Apparently, this is some sort of video greeting card that has been going around whole thing.
Yeah, somebody's got this.
I've seen these before. Yeah.
But it was.
But they're not cheap. They're like $15 each. But the thing is, if you buy a BMW, I mean, like, so okay, let's do some
we are
some
not
analytics.
Really BMW customers.
Yeah, I've never heard of BMW in my life.
You are fancy car customers. Let's be honest about that.
We are specific fancy car customers.
Well, I'm the sort of fancy car customer who is not going to buy a car because you sent me a video player.
It was a negative to me. I'm like, come on, can't you have like put this into your car?
I mean, the i8 is a beautiful car. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a beautiful car. So
kind of looks like it
is
911 in the back.
I mean, I think it's beautiful, but yeah, I can't afford any of these cars. So yeah. Also, I don't have a car, so there's also that.
Did you give up a car going to Chicago?
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, I haven't had a car in a year and a half. That's fantastic. Wow. Yeah. I drive a car every like 6 months now. I just drove one in the snow. That's a great way to get reintroduced to that experience. No. It's I'm on a train line here, so it's great.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. Yep. You were texting with me, and you said you were in. I thought somebody else was driving.
Yeah, my dad was.
Oh, all right.
Yes, we were texting, and yes, I did say I was driving. I was not actually driving at that point. I was in a car a lot this weekend or this week.
Don't text and drive.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm all about the self-drive. I'm so excited for the self-driving car thing.
Me too.
Like, I don't need that. I have self-driving cars. It's just the compute. I've said before, it's a meat controller, right? It's not to disparage, Uber and Lyft drivers, but like they're getting replaced, and like I'm not gonna miss them that much. Like they're the conversation isn't that great.
Fantastic conversations when you come to the Bay Area. I hear every single one of them is an entrepreneur who tells you all about their ideas.
Oh, that doesn't happen here.
I guess in LA they tell you all about your screenplays.
Yep. In Chicago they talk about sports, so yeah, hard pass. So I'm excited to see the video, the pictures of this video player, but it's just economics, right? If they send out $1,000 worth of video players to random people, and they're you're being targeted somehow, and one person buys it, that pays for itself. So, boom. Advertising.
What a
merchandising.
It's a colossal, and I hate throwing it away. I mean, we'll take it to some electronics place and throw it away properly. And maybe I'll clip the LiPo off because you can never have too many of those. Yeah,
I'll take that. I need that.
Yeah.
A couple 100 milliamp hours.
No,
maybe.
That is super wasteful.
4,000.
Really?
Yeah.
It's sad that's like throwaway, because it's like, okay, well that's some harmful chemicals, and most people are not going to recycle it, so that's a big drag.
I'm not even going to attempt to recycle the display into anything I want to use, because I don't want to deal with writing a driver for that display or sourcing it. If I want to make more than one, I'll just buy one off of
Yep.
SparkFun or whatever. Another question from embedded listeners for hardware, and this one is from Stanley. On our Save Your Board episode with Charlie Ladd, he liked the discussion of what good hardware documentation entails, but he worries that his documentation is lacking. And he wanted to know if we would be willing to send an email sample so he could get a better handle on what he should be shooting for. But Stanley, we didn't do that. And I think you probably sent this like 6 months ago. My email is so I'm not good at it.
2018, you declare email bankruptcy?
Let's just say anybody who wanted a sticker had already emailed me before December 15th, has not gotten their sticker by the end of January, should email again. Because I am right now, I have sent out all of the stickers that I am supposed to send out. I have not replied to the emails. I am declaring bankruptcy for emails sent before June. Sorry. Because I'm going to admit I'm not going to reply to them. Sorry, Stanley, and probably Tyler. And
we're replying to his email right this instant.
Okay. They're getting front and center. It's just they probably stopped listening because they felt slighted.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have ideas for good documentation?
Yeah. Good documentation. For hardware. I'm trying to think of the best hardware. Yeah, go ahead.
When we talked to Charlie, we talked some about how the hardware engineers have to read a lot of the data sheets, and as they're preparing the schematics, they have to do a lot of the address lookup and how are you going to program it in order to verify this part will work, and that the firmware engineer should check all of that, but oftentimes the firmware engineer has to redo all that work because the hardware engineer doesn't document it. And I still find that happened recently with a project. And I do find it frustrating. I mean, you want me to change this dual pot to control this voltage and current system. I'm happy to, but can you give me like 5 values of what you expect so that when I do it, I know whether or not I'm doing it right? Maybe I have them swapped. Can you just give me some examples?
So like testing criteria almost?
I want a few testing criteria for the things that software can change. I want to know GPIOs, should they be inputs or outputs? Turned out I had an output because it said out. And so I naively thought that if the net name had the word out in it, it should be an output from my processor, but that wasn't true. I think
this is a place where the software hitting the hardware world is really good, because this is kind of like an API idea, right? So like ultimately what knobs can I turn, that kind of thing, like on a board. Detailing like all this stuff, like what could possibly go wrong, is kind of tough because I don't know everything that can go wrong. So,
well, certainly things you've seen, right? And you can call those out to people who might not have that experience.
So I'm probably not a good example of this because I'm not very good at documentation. But what is some good guy? I guess I've seen some in the past, but it depends too. Like development board documentation is pretty bad usually. But like my favorite development boards are like the ones like, so the different layers of abstraction almost. It's like, okay, the first thing that I get with the development board is how do I make it do interesting things? And usually there's apps or some kind of thing that interfaces to that. And then it's like, okay, now I need register maps. Like what am I going to do if I'm going to go program it myself? And then layout stuff so that I know that if I go copy it and I can just replicate the thing as easily as possible. It's like those kind of 3 layers of abstraction kind of. Did I answer any of that stuff? I don't think I did. After hearing that.
No, I think...
Do we know what Stanley's working on? I guess that's the other question.
No, no.
Also, who's Charlie you're talking about? Charlie was
the guest.
Okay.
Charlie and I worked together
Save
like
your board.
20 years ago, and then again like 18 years ago. He's one of my favorite double E's, partially because he would send me Excel sheets that would tell me what the GPIOs should be inputs or outputs and whether or not they were special, which I guess like CubeMX outputs that now, which is nice. But even then, if there were things I needed to know that I might miss, like it's really important that you start these chips in this order. That sort of thing was always on the schematic. It was like the schematic was the interface between hardware and software. And there were support documents, but I didn't have to go learn it all myself.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I guess, yeah, the power up stuff is very important. I've seen some really bad schematics. I've probably mentioned them on the show before, but like some where they're just like they were in some competition to squeeze as much stuff into a sheet as possible. I was really proud of a student of mine who started like documenting and like adding pictures into KiCad. I didn't realize that was possible. So like, here's what this waveform should look like, and it was a screenshot of the waveform. That was killer.
That's
right?
Nice.
And it was like in like a bounding box, and like this part is doing like a sine wave generation, and here's the sine wave, and this is what it looks like, and then it was all hierarchical as well. Like that was great. So I've seen different levels of that. I'm not sure. Maybe it'd be better to like build a database of good versus bad, but I don't really have that. Because not everything is open, right?
I think that's what I want, and maybe there's somebody out there who already knows that. I want an open hardware project that has all the documentation done well. And sure, there are schematics, and sure, it's really nice to get a Gerber file when you're talking about open hardware. But what about all of the documents that go towards making the software more possible? And that doesn't work for small dev boards that are like accelerometer test boards. This only really counts if you have a processor and a couple of some things. And
right.
And then it would be really, yeah. So listeners, do you have an open source hardware that you can point us to that you would be like, this is good hardware documentation. This is what software engineers probably need when they're developing for my platform, for my open hardware platform.
I like that from the different perspectives too, because when I think about really good documentation, usually I'm thinking about like, well, what does a manufacturing engineer need to know?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a totally different thing of like, oh, well, here's the markings and make sure this part is really tricky, blah, blah, blah. Like the footprint on this is really bad. This one always flips up, tombstones in assembly, right? That's what the manufacturing engineer wants to know, versus the software engineer doesn't care about that.
Exactly. And there really are different perspectives to this.
Right. It's like an empathy thing, right? That's what Chris Veck talks about all the time. It's like empathy for different engineers. What do they care about?
Yeah. Because someday you may be the software engineer, you may be the hardware engineer. You never know what's happening here. We do seem to change around.
Yeah. I guess mechanical engineer would care about like part height and like things that are...
I remember making a board, and I had a W friend help me, and it turned out that neither one of us had looked at the part heights with the case, and then I had to like machine out part of the case because the screw holder. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Mechanical engineers are all... Let me tell you about mechanical engineers, since they're not here to represent themselves. They always try and make the tightest, sleekest looking damn thing, and that's always their problem, right? And of course, it looks nice. But yeah, it'll get you.
Don't get me started on chemical engineers.
Yeah.
Do you actually have
I used to work with a bunch of them, too.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I used to work with a bunch at Samsung. They're very process oriented. They're pretty great, actually.
Yeah, civil and chemical engineers are probably, and then mechanical engineers are probably the rigorous ones, and then double A's, and then software.
Yeah, we'll talk about long cycle times, right? Like go change a bridge,
right?
Or or a chemical process. They literally could just blow up. So yeah. All right. Did we answer that question or no? I don't know if we did.
I think the real way to answer it is to ask for our listeners to answer it for us.
Oh, okay. Fancy.
Yeah. I think that covers everything on our list.
Really?
Well, I was skipping a few things.
All right.
I don't want to talk about predictions for the future. I don't really have any.
I don't either. Things will get worse and better.
Things will get mostly better, but people will complain more.
Predictions are very hard, especially about the future. I don't know who said that, but...
What are you guys reading, maybe? Maybe that's a good question to end on, because that's always like futurish stuff. Also...
All right. I'll be the appropriate for the show.
Did I say something?
I'm reading Build Your Own Transistor Radio, which sounds like a book really for 4-year-olds, but I'm already totally confused after about 8 pages.
Oh, that's Ron. That's Ron Kwan, former guest of the Amp Hour.
Yeah. So it's very cool, but it's not.
It's harder than it's. No, that's a hard book. Yeah.
So I'll probably go through some of the exercises in there and build a few of those things. And
Ron doesn't make simple circuits either. Like, I mean, they are simple circuits, but he there's another prototyping method. He does like dead bugging and stuff like that, and clapper-clad.
Yeah, he mentioned clapper-clad. I'm like, what? No, I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. What else am I reading?
You have an STR book too.
Yeah. A book about things to do with the RTL STR, which also has a lot of detailed kind of background electronic stuff. So, but more software.
Okay.
So yeah, cool stuff like that.
What was the laughing about? Is that
she's usually the one reading the kind of books that I just mentioned. So
So what are you reading?
So my Kindle. So I have a Kindle, which I usually read at night. And it usually has nonfiction on it. And for that, I recently finished a book about jellyfish. And then I am currently reading a book about surviving in the wilderness. Because, these are things that are important.
Well, you guys live in the wilderness, so you never know.
But the laughter was because on my iPad, which is where I do most of my reading, my Kindle app is broken and it won't sync to Amazon. Oh, no. And then, so I need to delete the app and then reload it entirely. But I have many downloaded books. This is essentially...
And she can think of no method of keeping track of which books had been downloaded and re-downloading them later, other than to read them all before deleting the app.
This is my to be read pile.
Right.
And so, yes, I actually have taken a few days off with the holidays and have just blown through a large number of books.
Yeah, you only have 57 left to go.
Jesus.
As of today,
When
I
you say
only have
downloaded
52.
books, are these
52.
are these non Kindle books? I don't get it.
No, these are all
So,
Kindle books, but they're
So
books.
when they resync when you download again?
No, because
Because she doesn't know which ones they are because there's 800 books in our library.
actually there's something closer
you
to
just go-
1,300 in our library.
Can't you mark them in the Kindle app?
I suggested perhaps writing them down on a piece of paper.
That
but
works too,
wasn't-
right, yeah.
That wasn't acceptable.
The old ways are the best
These
ways.
are my
I
to
mean,
be read books, and it's time for me to read them. And I have just been clearing them out. Okay.
That's great. Okay, so what else is on your list?
I finished the nonfiction book about elephants, which I do sometimes read nonfiction on my iPad. I read a terrifying book about mermaids. Yep, you heard that right, mermaids.
That one's nonfiction.
No, that one was fiction.
Can we really be sure?
I don't know, although it went really strangely well with the jellyfish book that I was reading at the same time.
Yeah, right.
You opted not to download the book about cannibals because I didn't want to hear about it.
You didn't let me read the book about cannibals for reasons I don't understand.
Yeah.
Did you think that I was going to become a cannibal?
No, I thought that you would provide me with cannibal facts, which I care not to hear.
Right.
Yeah, Chris does often
Unsubscribe.
have to hear
Unsubscribe.
about whatever I'm reading about. I finished Cat's Eye, which is an Andre Norton book. She is a very famous science fiction author, but older science fiction, not current. And that was sometimes the older science fiction. You just read it, and you're like, "Wow, the world sure has changed." And this was not like that. This was very good. Yeah, I don't really know if I'm going to go on because it's sort of embarrassing.
If you ask Alicia what she's reading,
They get weirder from there,
We
huh?
could do a whole podcast.
Yeah,
on it.
it really could. Let's just say yesterday was a 3-novel day.
Wow. That is.
But I
Yeah,
should
that's
be
intense.
reading Tim O'Reilly's WTF, What's the Future book, because he will be on our
Ass.
show soon. Yeah, I know. And, I really was excited about this book because it's What's the Future? And I'm like, okay, let's talk about robotics and machine learning and cars and flying things and rockets. And there's so much future that's awesome. And for the first 100 pages, it's all been about history. And I'm like, I don't care. Don't care.
That's
Just
the past.
don't care.
That's not even the future. That's the past.
It's
Right.
And,
Should be
and
WTP.
then we made a website and I'm like, yeah, don't care. I was in college then. Yeah, don't care. So that's been a little tough, but I'm still looking forward to talking to him in a week or two.
That'll be good.
What are you reading?
I am chugging my way through the Isaacson Ben Franklin book. And yeah, it's great. It's going slower than I thought. The thing that really bugs me is it's getting towards the end of his life, and I'm only 55% through the book, so I'm just hoping there's a lot of footnotes at the end. I haven't looked ahead. I probably should, but we'll see what happens. And then I was real stuck on. So I went through 5 different books about learning. So Teach Beyond Your Reach, Mastery by George Leonard. That's a great book. That's actually by a kickboxing coach. Talks about becoming he talks about loving the plateau. That's a great lesson. That's pretty much the summary of the book, is to love the plateau. Learn to love the plateau. So as you're learning computer vision, you just need to work on the practice, and then you make these leaps and bounds forward by getting better at the practice. So that's how you learn hard things. Thinking Fast and Slow
That's
is,
really hard.
of course.
Well, I mean, sometimes that's the opposite of the message of peak, which is you can't get better if you just keep doing the same thing. You have to find ways to work hard to get better. I guess his plateau is probably still working hard at it.
Yes, it is. And it's having a directed plan. So I used it a lot for my piano practice, thinking about that stuff. Because what I did is I went to my teachers who were taking it way too easy on me. And I was like, look, no, I need a practice regimen. And that has been killer.
God, yeah.
Now the hard thing,
Getting music
is
instructors to give you
because
stuff like that is so
they
hard.
just listen. They're like, yeah, they'll be like, oh, whatever you want to do, just play a song. It's like, no, I need a practice. And so that was great. I've been thinking, I have a list going of what does it look like for an electronics practice, right? But then that kind of balances against, with piano, it's scales, I need to know scales. Okay, great. With electronics, I need to know soldering, but so maybe bold port is a good prescription there for soldering every day, or not every day, but on a regular basis. But I have a list going of what does electronics practice look like? And then, so that has been a very useful book for just kind of thinking through those things. Another one is Understanding by Design. That's not very far in because I got sold a PDF book on Kindle. What? How? Where? I could have done that anywhere. Why did they do that? I can't read it on my Kindle. That's what it's called, right? The Kindle. Yeah, I couldn't read it on the Kindle because it's a PDF. Making Learning Whole. That's one that my friend Mel, suggested. And then How to Be Miserable. The 40 strategies you already use. That's a self-help book like crazy. But that's actually from the CGP Grey video, if you haven't seen it.
Oh, he talks about really
7 ways.
Neat videos.
Oh, he's great. He has one about 7 ways it's based on that book, but 7 ways to be miserable. It's like a summary of it, and it's so good. It's about depression too. So it's basically like stay inside, don't exercise, all the usual things. So it's very tongue in cheek.
Ways to maximize misery.
Yep.
All right.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah.
And then you started to say Thinking Fast and Slow.
I am not a fan of this. Maybe I'm only 10% in.
Here we go.
No, I can see not being a fan of it. It is a trudge.
Yeah. Does it get better after 10% in? What do you like about it? Maybe that's
10% is only 1,000 pages, right?
Yeah. So having heard you, I think you like to know how to use something before you want to be bothered whether to dig into why it's important.
Correct. Yes, I'm engineer, not scientist, right? So like, I don't want to know the basis of all the universe. I want to know how do I use the universe to my advantage.
So go to the first page of each chapter and then take a page back. At the end of each chapter, he tells you how to implement all of the things he gives you a high level implementation on the things in that chapter. And so like in the chapter where he talks about, I'm a little hazy on exactly which chapter is which, but he talks about arguments and diffusing them. He gives the words that he's explained why these are the important words. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't care why these are the important words, skip to that last couple pages of each chapter and see if this is interesting. Because it is, it's like 1,000 pages. It's got really good stuff. If you read the whole thing, of course, these other things are going to make more sense and they're going to stick a little better. But if you're the sort of person who wants the action before you want the understanding, then do that.
Well, it's like context or something, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, that's really good advice. I like that a lot, actually. So, okay. I have to, okay, I will be a little bit of a fanboy of my own company. They have like the best, which we copied totally from Buffer, but it's the best perk ever. Any Kindle book I want, I can just buy.
Wow.
The company will pay for it. Personal or professional. It is, it's so it's copied from Buffer.
Can I
Alicia
work there?
Can never work there.
Can I work there just for the benefits?
She will bankrupt your company.
Right. I know, right.
And you don't even have to because I buy almost all of my books from Kindle Daily Deals. I almost never.
She will still bankrupt the company.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is the best perk I've ever heard of too. Like, because it's just so out, like, oh, I don't have to, like, I told my family for Christmas, I was like, sorry, you can't, like, I always ask for books, right? It's just a thing I've done since I was 0. Well, I didn't ask, but, like, it's just always been a thing when holidays and stuff like that, whenever someone's giving me a gift, but now it's not really a thing. So, yeah.
Is this off of your Amazon account? Or did they keep the book?
Yeah, that is how they. No, that's how they do it. So it's my account. It's just a reimburse thing. So, but it's just a mental thing. It's so weird, right?
It is just a mental thing.
Because it's like you see a $30 Kindle book, you're like, oh, $30. But now it's like,
I have no problem.
I want to learn that thing.
If I want a book, I'm just going to buy it. I don't care how much it costs.
I was so excited when Chris finished the book he was reading and saw that Artemis was out by Weir. Because there was no way I was going to buy it at full price, and he just pushes the button. Now we have it, and I can read it. As soon as I finish these other 50 books, I will totally be on it.
Do you two share?
Yeah.
A Kindle account too? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's so that means Chris sees what you buy on daily deals each.
Yeah.
I don't like the deals,
And I get the ads that are definitely targeted to her because she probably reads 10 times
you like
as much as I do.
jellyfish. Maybe you'll like sea anemones.
Yeah, that's not what I get.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do read romances sometimes. And it likes to, and if you are the sort of person who even reads like one romance out of 10 books, they market heavily because most romance readers read a lot.
Yeah, so my Kindle usually has some bare-chested dude staring from the front of it at all times.
Got it.
It's fine.
Now, the fact that I also read mysteries and sci-fi and nonfiction, they don't care. It's all about the romance novels.
Right. It's where the money comes in. Wait until that video ad comes in the mail. Right? You open up the little video portfolio thing, and it's Fabio. Okay, well, I think we should end on Fabio. What do you think?
Let me just write that down as a title.
Yeah, right. I would like to actually have a Star Wars spoiler discussion in the outro. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So now I'm supposed to say thank you all for listening. Thank you to Christopher for producing, co-hosting. Thank you to Chris Gamble for being our guest or for being a host on his show. We don't know.
If you heard any ads in this thing and you didn't hear them here, we didn't put them there.
We did no ads.
We still have a Patreon.
Everybody has Patreon.
Empower has a Patreon.
You don't get anything for being supporters, but we do love you slightly more.
We love you. Yeah, they're the best.
Have a good year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year,
2018.
Actually. 2018. I think it'll be a good one.
I think so too.
Okay, spoilers. Wait a minute. You were gonna hook up one of the synths so that you?
Nah, it was too far.
Oh man, you could have played us into like Spoilerland with Star Trek sounds.
Oh, we could. If you want to come up with a sound,
we did
it again.
You can make a custom. You can make a custom You can make it a custom embedded theme if you wanted. You can intro your music like that.
How much time do I have?
Amp Hour, Embedded, and the Emperor's March.
No, don't give me ideas like that because that's not actually.
No,
practical.
I mean, like you don't need to remix any of our stuff. I mean, like, yeah, no, use your Blippy stuff and just make like it custom. That would be great.
All right,
it can be super simple too.
I will endeavor
to
do
us
that.
Original music
in the next 48 hours.
Right. That's right. Okay, so
Did
is.
you like the Star Wars movie?
I loved it. Oh my god! Of course, I loved it
because we know people who didn't, and
yeah,
they
whatever.
just
they were
whatever.
wrong.
Yeah.
What a bunch of here's my thing. Did you see BB-8 with the carbon resistors? Yes. What was up with that?
I loved that.
It's always with the resistors. I have the same thing in. I love Andy Weir, but like the whole like power drill thing where he's like, oh, you just do like a resistor divider. Like that's literally my only argument or my only point against the entire Martian book is just the resistor divider in the power drill thing.
Why they do that though? It's like the one component that at least a fair number of people know. Oh, that's some sort of.
I know. Oh, resistor. Right.
But did you notice how Chewie stocked up the Millennium Falcon before he went to go save the refugees? It was good that he put all those porgs in because they were going to be delicious.
Is this like the did Chewie actually eat porgs discussion? I don't
care.
Read about that.
Chewie's still the best.
I don't either.
She thinks he stocked it with snacks. That's why there were so many in there.
I think so too. I mean, like they were talking about it was like they were nesting in there, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Delicious.
Self-regenerating snacks.
Yeah, right. Snacks on snacks. Yeah, so that's really all. I was very dismayed that like why resistors? I don't get it. Why not just make it look like future panel?
They were sort of not. I mean, they didn't look exactly.
They were resistors.
Like they were a little different.
They were carbon film resistors. They were like
big,
or not even. They were like wire wound resistors. Like they were like, yeah,
they were space resistors.
Space.
Porgs are secretly puffins.
Yeah, right. With cuter faces. Well, maybe not. Yeah, no, I loved it though. So I guess that's all I have to say.
That's not how you fix electronics. You don't just stick metal bits and
Stick your head against it. Yeah,
until it works.
That's how I fix it. It must be why it never works.
yeah, right. Like they were doing it like it was like a slapstick, like putting your finger in the leaky
Yes.
leaky wall kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I get it, but like
aren't electronics just like water? I
It
mean,
is.
that's what the
That's how I was
analogy
taught.
is.
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I guess I'll stop recording now. Looks like my
All right.
computer's slowing down. That's a good sign.